Hey everyone, welcome back to Origin Millwork. This is behind the build. Today we're going to be taking this sheet of MDF. I've already cut the rough size, and we're going to be making this into a barn door. Traditionally, I dislike MDF. I'll go over as we're working with this why I've selected it for our base for this project. And we're going to do a little bit of a real-time video on this, some time lapse. This is going to be built and produced in a day, minus paint. Let's go. Alright everybody, so what I have here is some leftover shiplap from a project because last year, the year 2020, was the year of shiplap everything. So we've got a significant amount left over, and I'm going to be using this to go ahead and lay down a pattern on top of our MDF base, and then we're going to actually be trimming with edge band in a way that's going to complement this 1/4 inch reveal that we're going to be getting from our shiplap. I also have a detail that we're going to lay down the center as well, so I'll kind of take you along for that. I like to kind of take an idea that I have or an inspiration and put my little bit of a spin or a style on it. I try not to really just like replicate anything that I see out there. There's so many great craftsmen in this space. Sometimes it can be hard to be completely original, and let's be honest, we're all inspired by others within the space, and I think that's a good thing. But let's get started here. And get you set up in the tripod mode here in a second, but I wanted to kind of go over some of the details of this first. So what I've done essentially is I've just marked the center point of my back panel, and I have pre-cut all of my 45-degree sections. I'm going to have them intentionally run long, and then I'm going to cut a perfect edge with my track saw. So to get these oriented correctly, I'm just using my square as making sure I have perfect 45-degree angle, as well as my reference line here. And because of how I'm going to edge band this, I want to make sure that I'm keeping the point of this exactly 3/4 of an inch down from the current top of this board. And we'll get into that here in a little bit, but we are going to get set up here and go. Alright everyone, I'm going to be trying to do this without cuts as much as possible, cuts in the video that is. I want to just kind of make this flow through the process. I want to be able to get this project and this video out in the same day, and that's going to be kind of the behind the build series. So trying to make sure we've got a decent quality here for you. I'm trying to record audio here on the iPhone as well as the Osmo Action up there, so hopefully audio will be okay throughout this. And if it's not, or you have ideas on how to better the audio, comment that below, let me know. But let's dig into kind of what I have out right now. So I am going to be fastening my shiplap, and this is a shiplap product, which simply means that we have a tongue that overlaps our previous board, but there is no retention. Alright everyone, I'm going to be trying to do this with as few video cuts as possible, so bear with me with any of the mishaps. I want to get better at producing higher quality content, and hopefully the audio situation here is going to be good. I've got 2 different devices recording audio, so we're not using the camera audio. But let's get into it. What we have here is we have shiplap, okay? So that means we have a tongue that overlaps our previous board. As you can see, there's no retention here on the back. If you're using a product that would be nickel gap, that's going to have a tongue and a groove so that your bottom of your board is going to have retention. I do prefer nickel gap over shiplap, but we had shiplap, and we're going to be able to make a beautiful door utilizing what we have. So what that means is I'm actually going to be face nailing the bottom here to make sure that I'm able to hold this bottom in place, so over time we don't get our board trying to lift up at all. This is a pine product, so it is real wood, and it does have relief cuts here in the back of it to make it more stable and to avoid warping and cupping and stuff like that. So another measure of precaution, I like to do things a little overkill sometimes. I like to just make sure things are going to last for a long time. So I'm actually going to be using this Loctite PL Premium. Now this is 8 times, it's what I had on hand. 8 times, definitely a little bit of overkill there. You could go with their normal, traditional 3 times, or even their quick grab product. I don't like using wood glue when I'm working with MDF, bonding wood to it. I just don't feel it gives a good bond. I don't care for it. So to make sure it doesn't move, we've got the PL Premium. I'm just shooting 1-inch nails. This is a 9/16 product here, and our MDF base is 3/4 of an inch thick. Now, the reason I'm using MDF base is because I want to make sure that this door is affordable, and I want to make sure that this door is stable. What this MDF base provides is something that's going to remain flat. It's not going to warp, shrink, bow, swell. I mean, your doors should not be getting wet, right? So that's one of the main reasons I don't care for MDF. But with that, we are going to be, see, lost my train of thought. All right, I lost my train of thought there in transition, so let's get attaching these boards. I'm just using my square here, and I'm going to be using that as an edge reference to go ahead and get this all lined up. So first things first, let's just put a few dabs of our adhesive here on the back, which has set up on me a little bit because it was sitting. Now, definitely do not need a lot of this. Just going to do it in a few spots. It's just purely to satisfy my own worries. We'll sleep sound at night knowing this won't go anywhere. Now I'm just going to get this roughly oriented where I would like it. And then I'm going to use my square to give myself a 45-degree angle to hold this against, making sure we get everything nice and where we want it. Pretty happy with that. Alright, first board in place. Your first 2 boards are the most critical because everything is going to be based off of these first 2 boards above and below them. If I were going to be keeping my pattern intact here, what I would be doing for these mitered joints is wood gluing them, or maybe we go really in depth and biscuit them as well, depending what the application is. But I have a different design I'm doing here, so I'm not going to worry about gluing these joints, and you'll see why later. So let's work around here to our other side, get this in place, and then things kind of start flying together. Once I get moving, I'm actually only going to be putting 2 face nails in these. I put 3 down here to make sure my first boards don't move at all, since I'm going to be kind of stacking everything against that. Now when you're nailing off this product, you want to make sure of a few things. You want to make sure that you're not nailing close enough to your edge, that you're going to interfere with your next board that will interlock into this. And when you're nailing the tongues, if you nail on the upper section of them, you don't want to nail too close to the edge where you're going to split it, but keeping on that upper section, your next board that goes over will cover those nails, and you won't have to worry about trying to mitigate any visible nail holes in that shadow gap, because it's virtually impossible to do that cleanly. So stacked up over here, I have my next board sets. So we're just going to simply slide these in. I don't get that down on the groove, but I'm showing the concept here. Alright everyone, so I'm not sure what happened there. I looked up and the camera was no longer blinking, so I don't know, I lost some footage there. But all you missed there is I fastened our first shiplap boards, and I'm going to be working backwards from there. Now, if you're a little OCD like I am, something that will drive me crazy with these boards in this specific product is it is an imperfect product, meaning its thickness varies slightly, and even if you cut from the same board, it's not going to be milled exactly the same each time. So lining up your miter joints, you can get a tight miter, but what might happen is your tops might be perfect, but then your bottom down here might actually run a little long, which is definitely not ideal. But I'm going to be actually working a design into this that's going to alleviate that for me. So I'm going to focus on getting my tops really nice. My bottoms will be what they are, and that's just the nature of the product that we're working with. Sometimes you have to make exceptions. If I was going to be doing this design where the miters had to be tight and perfect, I would actually probably use a different product, or I would try to cut all of my joints from the same boards as much as possible. Now, with shiplap as well, you traditionally actually work from, you put on your bottom and you'd work up. That's how I do it on a wall. And I could have done that with this door, but because in all honesty, it's not that much shiplap, because I want my top side to be absolutely dead on where that reveal cut's going to be, I'm just working backwards here a bit, and I'm laying down some of that adhesive, sliding my boards in where they need to be, and then I'll go back and I'll face nail it. It also might look like I'm not putting a lot of that adhesive down, and it's because I'm not. If you've not worked with that product before, less is more. Honestly, a dab of that will hold a significant amount. As well as we have our mechanical fasteners going through this, so we're not just relying on a chemical bond to hold everything in place. If we were, I'd want to lay down some more. Who here uses those battery-powered caulk guns? Let me know in the comments. Are those worth it? Do you like those? I haven't made the jump to it yet. I've got mostly DeWalt tools for my on-site tools. I just got into the Milwaukee platform a little bit because of their vacuum. That new stick vacuum. Got that. Makes on-site cleanup much faster. Has a powered carpet attachment, which is nice. So I don't know if I should maybe look into a battery operated caulk gun in the future, or what you all think of those. I do have an M12 Milwaukee tool, and I do have some of the M18, like I said. So I'm in both those platforms and the DeWalt platform. So I know everyone with each of those platforms kind of has a solution there. Alright, so as you can see, we're just kind of keep folding together. And we are going to quickly run into our workspace here. You might kind of look at the shop and go, man, what does this guy have going on? And I've filmed a few time-lapse videos of kind of gutting out this basement. It used to look much different than this. Our home was built in the 50s, and I'm going to be kitting this out as a full shop with a full assembly table, table saw that's a non-portable table saw, and all that stuff as we kind of grow. Origin Millwork started in 2020. We also have a company, Indust Construction, where we do residential remodeling, residential general contracting, stuff like that, on-site work. and that is why you see a lot of on-site tools, and that's also why I'm wearing this Diamondback nail bag. I am just more comfortable with a tool belt on. A lot of shop-based carpenters don't necessarily wear a tool belt when they're in the shop, but I'm used to wearing one. I'm accustomed to being around finished stuff with it on, and it just keeps things more handy for me. But with that, I think I lost my train of thought, where I'm going to be building out some nice assembly tables. I just don't know exactly what style I want to go with yet. Maybe like a Ron Paulk setup, maybe a setup that's on wheels so I can move it but lock it down. I do have a fair bit of space here actually. The camera is really only showing half of what's available at the moment. So I could do a stationary setup with a table saw with an outfeed table that's kind of a built-in assembly table there. But I don't know. So let me know your thoughts on that. If you have a shop that is kind of garage or basement based, I have a little bit more room than you would in a standard 2-car garage. So if that's telling of space at all. I think one of the hardest things for me with making content, or trying to make content, is talking to the camera solo. Anyone that's watching this, you can't really talk to me real time. Maybe that's why everyone does live streaming. If you are watching this for Behind the Build series, what would you think of something like this live stream versus a filmed video and then published? Let me know in the comments if that'd be interesting to watch. You can kind of interact real time. All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put down these 2 boards, and I'm going to start nailing off some of what I have above so nothing moves on us. Alright, so I'm going to run through, nail this. Something to keep in mind here is you just want to make sure that your tops, if that's what you're aiming for, if you don't have a perfect product, you want to make sure that your tops are nice and lined up, and making sure that your reveals are nice and even all the way down through, meaning that your boards are joined tightly together. So that's what to look out for. I'm going to fire probably 4 nails, 4 face nails in each one of these. I know that is something I'll have to go back later and fill, but I do quite a lot of shiplap and filling the nail holes on 20-foot walls. I've gotten pretty quick at it. And to be honest, once you have the top nailed in, or the board that is on the top rather, it can't come out. If the bottom's fastened, this top can't come out. So I'm probably only going to face nail every other shiplap board on the top here. It's just less nails to fill, and it's also not required. So probably help if I put the earmuffs on to actually protect the hearing aid. everyone. So the next step here is a little bit stressful. It could absolutely ruin the entire project. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually route a shadow gap in between all of these boards, because my finished design is going to have a shadow gap around the perimeter as well as then up through the center. So every place that the boards would either adjoin themselves or adjoin the edge is going to be a consistent shadow gap. To find out the exact spacing of where my router needs to be, I just simply put a fence here on a piece of scrap board and then ran my router base plate along it, and it gave me a perfect measurement where I have to be. This is helpful to do this anytime because if you have a different bit or you have like the slightest variation, this measurement can change. So even if it's a bit that I know and I know the offset, I always do this just to double check, especially when it could, scrap a whole project. So I'm gonna fire up the router and run this through here. Cross our fingers, everything goes well. For this, I'm just using my DeWalt cordless router. This thing is honestly great. It might be a little bit small, but I've done anything from installing stair skirt board with this to routing, rough lumber. I mean, it's for a small router, it's great. Alright, so we had some slight issues with the router coming out of adjustment on us. Tighten that up, solve the issue obviously, and we did not damage the workpiece at all in the process. Overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I did see this when I modeled this on the computer before building it, but I wasn't sure how I would like this reveal, shadow gap, whatever you want to call it, here in the middle until I saw it in person. I was slightly concerned that the issue I'd spoken about where the boards are a slight different width or thickness when they come together at that 45. I was slightly worried when I would route this channel in here, it would actually exaggerate that. But there's enough distance here where it flows together nicely and your eye really doesn't pick up on any of that. So overall, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. And now we're going to actually take our track saw. We're going to lay our track saw, cut this to width and height. And that'll give us a nice perfect edge every time. And then we'll go ahead and put put our edge banding on, which is going to carry on the same pattern basically as our 1/4 inch reveal on the front and the back side. And this will be ready to fill nail holes, sand, and go for paint. Doing the reveals like this, I like to kind of improve on everything I do, kind of based on what I learn either from myself during the process, or I'll see something, I'll be like, well, how could I improve on that a little bit, and kind of like put my own spin on it. So I had built a barn door before for a client through our construction company, and built that, installed it, they loved it, they were super happy with it, it turned out fantastic. But what I didn't like through the build process was trying to get the front of the edge band, if you'd call it that, the edge band basically, to plane in perfectly with the shiplap. Because the shiplap varies in thickness and bows up and stuff like that, it was just a ton of sanding to get that all smoothed out and in plane. As well as then on the back side, you have to make sure that is perfect thickness, which you can do quite a few ways, but I actually like to do the shadow gap detail because it makes it perfect to your eye every time. So that's what we're going to do, and let's get after it. Alright, so when I cut this MDF down to my rough size, I knew what my final dimension was going to be. So I cut my height to the exact dimension, but because I'm going to be putting edge banding on that's 3/4 inches thick, I knew I was working with a leeway of 3/4 inch for my overhang, likewise with the side as well. So what we're going to do is essentially find the edges of our core sheet beneath this. We're going to mark 3/4 inch in, and we're going to cut that all down with a track saw on all sides. I think I'm going to actually set this up in time lapse instead of real time, because that saw makes a lot of noise. It's not really going to be best for hearing me. I just have I believe my track is 60 inches long. DeWalt actually makes, I think it's either 102 or it's 120. You can also link the tracks together, but what you're going to see me is just cut this with my 60-inch track. I'll move it once and cut the edges. In an ideal world, I would have that longer track. I'd just lay that on and just slice everything at one time. It's a little quicker that way, but I've cut a lot of stuff by moving this track. So. Alright, let's talk about what you just saw there on the time lapse. So when I installed my shiplap, it was all done with an overhang of my core board, which means I had to basically find the core board beneath my shiplap to orient myself to cut it properly. The way I like to do this is I like to start with my bottom, and I just kind of eye close to cutting to my core board, and I cut that off. Then I find out what that overhang is, figure out the difference so I can mark a square baseline that actually cuts my shiplap and my core board minus my 3/4 inches I need on the bottom. Once that's trimmed to perfection and square, I can measure from there up and find my top boundary. Once I cut my upper boundary, my horizontal lines running down are much easier to find and orient because my core board is now directly in line with my shiplap above. I don't know if that's making a ton of sense with how I'm describing it, but it's really easy once you basically orient one edge to find all of the others and cut inward. This does get pretty heavy, so while I could flip it upside down, I don't like doing that, especially while some of the adhesives are still setting up. I don't really want to flip it upside down. That's one thing I also do like about this MDF core is when this door is hanging on some nice hardware, it's rather heavy. So when you go up and you slide this door, it's like a satisfying feeling of like you're sliding this giant heavy door. So it also doesn't tend to move around a lot or anything like that. So that's where we're at now. Next step here is going to be putting our edge band on, and then we're going to be done for the behind the build on this. I will not actually be like filling the nail holes and all that stuff on the video, just because I'm actually going to be doing that tomorrow when I'm paint prepping another project as well at the same time for my efficiency. And when I started in construction, I actually started working for a larger contractor that was more commercial based, but also had done some really large scale residential style projects as well. And we would go in there, and carpenters, we just run through, we do all the trim, doors, you know, if there's built-in stuff like that. And after we're done like this, peppered with nails, we just, all right, painter's problem. Where obviously, you know, I'm not going to do that to my painter, as well as I like to ensure that everything is all prepped properly, because it makes their life easier, as well as I can ensure everything is just kind of perfected how I want it to be. And not rely on a third party for that. I actually will, I'm unsure if this door specifically, if I'm going to paint this myself or if I'm also going to outsource this. I have a Titan HVLP sprayer that I can spray with, but it just depends what finish level I want to go with on this. I don't know, we'll see, but I'm rambling at this point, so let's wrap this up. All right, everyone, so for this door specifically, my edge banding is just going to be some MDF that I've ripped down and profiled on my router. I've given this a profile on my router that will mimic the reveal we've placed by routing the center miter here. So we're going to match that same reveal around our perimeter. Very simple. What I've done to prep for this is I've basically just gone ahead and sanded everything after routing. I've also sanded my door because paint does not like to stick to 90-degree edges. I've gone ahead, I've sanded that, I've sanded my core board, I've wiped that down, vacuumed it, making sure there's no dust hanging around that will then interfere with my glue joint. So, we've got our edge banding, we've got our surface prepped, we've done our sanding we can before we attach it, so it's not hard to sand once it's attached. Now we're going to attach it, get this one going. Not sure where that time lapse ends. One of my buddies called me and I was talking with him on the phone and trying to go ahead and get this cleaned up so we can show you the finished product. Not finished, but finished as far as the construction is concerned. Like I said, we're going to have to final sand this. We're going to have to fill the nail holes and do the traditional stuff like that. But let's take a look around, and I apologize if there are any audio scrubs as I handle the camera here. But here we have our door. Like I said, rough construction is complete. You may wonder why I was wearing the respirator, and I just truthfully hate MDF dust. I just do not like breathing it in at all. So you can see here, we have our 45-degree angular pattern running down through. We have our joint that runs all the way down through. And you can see here I've still got some sawdust to clean out there. And then you can see our edge profile here, how we have this 1/4 inch reveal the whole way around. So kind of simple on this one. Just making a barn door that's kind of a play on a unique style that I like. I do hope one day to have a CNC down here actually. Big dreams, big dreams. And a lot of times you'll see patterns like this just kind of milled into a sheet of MDF traditionally. That's kind of how they do it on a big production scale. I don't really have an interest in that. I like to, again, kind of put my own unique spin on things. So I've got some experience with CAD. I've got some experience with taking CAD, 2 different file types for manufacturing purposes. So I've got some really cool ideas of some things that we could do with the CNC to kind of add more intricate layers to things. So we don't just take a standard sheet of stock and put a pattern on it or something like that. This door is MDF core, 9/16 thick shiplap on the face, and then edge banded. This edge band is an MDF. I would do a hardwood traditionally. Just going to stand up to the test of time a little bit more if you bump into it or something like that. However, a lot of doors are MDF. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Behind the Build. Let me know what you think of this. Is this a format that you like? Would you like shorter or longer? My whole hope behind Origin Millwork is to not only build the company, but also kind of build a community and kind of produce content. I really enjoy producing content. I'm not polished at it yet, but I hope to get better as I go. I hope to, like I say, grow the brand, grow the community, and grow the company, and bring everyone along for the ride. So if you are on YouTube and you're watching this, hit like, hit subscribe. Helps the algorithm know that we exist. This is our first video. And if you are on IGTV, give us a follow and check out what we post as we kind of keep track of everything we do. So thanks everyone. See ya.